Salesforce Development Day 35. So today we are going to, let's see what are we going to learn today. We'll quickly go through the previous session review and we will talk about the use case that we have discussed yesterday and trigger handler factor. What are the trigger best practices and homework trailhead in today's interview questions. Now, yesterday's class, what we have discussed about auto lead convert. How can we convert the lead through the trigger? Multiple leads at a time, how can we convert it? So we have seen the scenario like how to do this, everything we have seen. Now let's assume that here few methods we have in the lead convert. So methods are set lead ID, set send notification email, set do not create a opportunity, set convert status. Now here set do not create opportunity. Set do not create opportunity. For this do not create a opportunity, let's assume that for few records, this is the same code that I wanted, but few records based on a certain conditions or a few records, it should not accept it. Whenever I say don't create it, it should not create it. Whenever I say create it, it should create it. What is the best way that we can implement for that? Instead of passing the hard-coded value here, how can we pass the dynamic field? How can we pass the dynamic field?
Swapna, do we need to create one extra field and then set it like do not create this opportunity or something like that?
Right. So we will be creating a new field. That field is similar to this, do not create. So let's create a field here, do not create opportunity. Now let's go ahead and on the lead. So we'll create a new field on the lead object. We'll say, now here I'll create a new field which is called checkbox. I'll create a new field of checkbox. Click on next. And here I'll create a same field, do not create opportunity. By default, it is unchecked. If you want to add a description, you can add a description. In case if you want to add a help text, for example, if I say here, if the checkbox, is selected, then it won't create. That means whenever I say here true, whenever the do not create a checkbox is true, then it will not create it. Then it won't create opportunity. It won't create opportunity during the lead conversion. Now click on it next. Now here, I'll say here, click on a next button. By default, everything is same. Now I have created a new field and also I have added into the page layout. Let me switch to the classic. Now let's go ahead and create a lead. So assume that this is the lead. Here we have a new field which is called as a do not create opportunity. Whenever I say true here, that means it should not be creating the opportunity. Now I'll say that do not create a opportunity true and lead status is closed. Whenever I say this condition, it should not create a opportunity. Now, what is the field name here? Do not create a opportunity. I guess, let's see the field name, view fields. Now we have a field called do not create a opportunity. Now I'll go to the developer console. In the developer console, instead of hard coding here, instead of hard coding the value here false, what I'll do is I'll check here what are the lead record is there, lead record dot this value. Lead record dot this. Now let's go ahead and create a true and then lead status is a closed converted. Now I'll click on a save button. As soon as I click on a save, based on this field, what will happen? Now why it did not convert it. So here is the after update. Now is this trigger is on or off? Let's check the trigger. Auto convert trigger is active. Now let me create a new lead again. Click on new lead. Now let's say here Pat Berry. Now company is Tuesday. And then this is the open. And this is a do not create an opportunity. Click on a save. Annual revenue. Click on save. Now what I'll do is I'll update the lead status here, closed converted. When we update the closed status, now here we are getting the is updated lead record ID, master label if the lead status is equal to closed converted, and if the is converted equal to false, it should go inside. Then we are doing the lead convert here, set lead ID, set notification, opportunity name, and create an opportunity converted. Then we are updating the details here. Perfect. Now I'll update the lead status equal to closed converted. Now click on a save. Now let's see this debug logs. Inline editing. Debug. Your result is it is getting the data. Is true. Opportunity name, opportunity ID must be null. Invalid field. One or more leads could not be converted if do not. Okay. So let me comment out this. Let's say now I'll create a duplicate record here. First name 12, last name 12, click on it, save. And now I'll update the lead status to closed converted, click on it, save. Now it is converted to the account and contact. Before the problem was we have given here lead opportunity name. Here I have mentioned the lead opportunity name, and at the same time I'm saying here the condition is true. So that's the reason I have commented it. So based on the dynamically I'm passing the Boolean value here, which are the lead records are says true. Those records will be converted, but opportunity will not be created. But opportunity will not be created. Now here, whoever the records are false, that means this particular checkbox is false, then that particular checkbox, whichever it says false, it will be converted and created account contact opportunity. So we are passing the data here dynamically. Similarly, send notification email. Send notification email. For this also, if you wanted to process the data, for this also, if you wanted to process dynamically the send notification email, if you wanted to process dynamically, then you need to create another field and pass the data here, send notification email. Now, this is the scenario that we have seen yesterday. And if you want to pass the dynamically, you can create a field and you can pass the data dynamically of particular record. Now let's assume we are moving on to the trigger handler factor. What is the trigger handler factor? So trigger handler factor is, let's assume that we have written, let's assume we have written a trigger. We have written a trigger. There is a trigger that we have written here. Assume that here we have written the trigger auto lead convert. Just now whatever we have converted it, auto convert trigger on lead. And then we have created the after update. We have created the after update. Now here, inside this, we have created a condition, the context variable if trigger dot is after and trigger dot is update. If this condition is true, then we have written some for loop here within the if condition. Within the if condition, no, within the if condition, we have written some for loop logic, for loop lead ID, and we are passing the trigger dot new, and then within the for loop, we have written the logic. We have seen the database dot convert lead, right? That's what we have did it yesterday. What is this convert lead? We have seen the convert lead also.
Okay, and database.base.
Yeah. So yesterday we have seen the lead convert as well as the convert lead both. Now here, within this for loop, we have written the business logic. We have written some business logic. This business logic is to convert the lead. Convert the lead record. This is what we have seen. Now assume that this is we have written on the trigger. That means whenever the lead is updated, So whenever the lead is updated, we wanted to do this logic. Assume that there is a visual force page. in the visual force page, we are displaying the list of records. We are displaying the list of records. That means lead is always starts with 00Q, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have some name for this. The lead name is, let's assume Akash. This is one lead. And similarly, we have a 00Q, 1, 2, 3 data, and this here we have a Bhagyashree. Bhagyashree. And then we have like this, we have some records. And then we have Bharati. Zero Q, some number. And finally, we have a Jyoti. Now, there are some records which are available. These are the records which are available here. Now, this visual force is basically it is showing the list of records, list of lead records. And in front of this, there is a checkbox. There is a checkbox. Now, that means all the lead records it is showing here, and in front of them, there is a checkbox. So we have it in front of them like this. We have some checkbox. Like this, there are 4 records are there. On top, we have a button on the visual force page. Here there is a button. Here we have a button. And this button, it says that convert lead. Convert leads. Convert leads. Now this is the button. This is the visual force page. Visual force page. That means here also whenever the users select, maybe one record they are selecting it, or maybe they are selecting the multiple record. It is possible that they are selecting the multiple records or they are selecting the single record. Whenever they select a record here, and as soon as they select a record here and click on the convert lead, it should convert the leads. It should convert the lead. That means whenever we click on a convert lead, the logic which is there in the trigger, that's the same logic should be executed. That's the same logic should be executed. So whatever the logic is written here, that's the same logic gets executed even on the visual force page. And same thing on the lead. On the lead, whenever we update a lead status, this is on the lead record. Whenever we update a lead status, that's the same logic should be executed. Same logic should be executed. Now, for these two scenarios, same logic. Now we are covering the lead record. We are covering the lead record because we are writing the logic on the trigger. But within this logic, whenever we are writing a logic within the trigger, that's the same logic should be executed by another user interface. That means we are calling that logic from the multiple place. We are calling the multiple places. Whenever we are doing this logic, we are calling it from the multiple places. Like this may be possible that from the lightning aura or some other places, we might need to call the same logic. So what is the trigger handler factor here? It says that whatever the business logic is there, whatever the business logic is there, that business logic take out from here, take out from the trigger. Do not write the business logic in the trigger. You need to create a separate class. You need to create a separate class for this. You need to create a separate class. What is that separate class? So you need to write a class which is an Apex class. You need to write a Apex class. Now here we are writing the logic similar to the Apex class, like a public class, lead handler class, lead handler class. Now within this lead handler class, now here we will write a method public static void, and I'll create some method name here. Let's assume that auto lead convert, auto lead convert. Now whatever the logic that I have written in the trigger, whatever the logic that I have written in the trigger, that logic I'll remove it from the trigger. So we should not be writing any logic here. Just take out that logic and paste it into the class. Whatever the class is there, just paste it there. That means now what we can do is you need not to write a repeated logic every time. You need not to write a repeated logic. So before, what happened, whenever we were implementing a trigger, we were writing the business logic within the trigger. So for Visualforce, this is the same logic needs to be called, but from the Visualforce, we cannot call the trigger, right? We cannot call the trigger. For that, we were created a separate Apex class only for the Visualforce. Now this class is for the lead record. That means I am writing the logic, duplicate logic, which I am writing it. Duplicate logic. That means the code, whatever I am writing it, it is repeated. It is repeated. But as per our standard, as per the standard Apex classes, that means there is a limitations on how many characters that we are writing it. There is a limitations on how many characters we are writing in the Apex class. Now, if we cross this limit, then we cannot implement the Apex class. So that's the reason, one of the reason is for that, do not write a repeated logic every time. Better take out the logic from the trigger. That's the best practice. So take out the business logic from the trigger and place it into the Apex class. Place it into the Apex class. So this class, wherever it is needed, that means now this class can be called from here. This class can be called from here. From the trigger also it can call, as well as it can call from the Visualforce. That means if you want it from the different places also, you can call it from different places. There is no restriction. There is no restriction. Now this is called as a trigger handler factor. This is called as a trigger handler factor. That means we have to write a logic as a separate Apex class, and this Apex class, you need to call it from the trigger. You need to call it from the trigger. Now let's take a same scenario, the one which we have implemented here, auto lead convert. For the auto lead convert, what we are doing it, we are checking the trigger context variable here. Is after is update. Then what I'm doing, I'm writing the business logic entirely here. Business logic entirely here. Now what I'll do is I'll create a separate Apex class. I'll create a separate Apex class. Let's say that lead handler utility or a lead handler class, or you can just simply say lead handler. Lead handler is the class. Now here within this, we will be writing the public static void. Let's say that what should be the method name. Now here we have a after update. The context variable is after update. So what I'll use is, I'll use the method name which is says after update. I'll use after update. Now, once this class is implemented, now what I'll do is, whatever the business logic is there in the trigger, whatever the business logic is there within the trigger, that entire logic, I'll take it from here. Now that business logic, I'll place it here. Business logic, I'll place it here. But what is the thing that I need here? Trigger.new. Trigger.new, which I needed. Trigger.new, I cannot find it in the Apex class. Trigger.new, I cannot find it in the Apex class. So basically, I need to pass the trigger.new from the trigger to the, whenever I'm calling this particular method, I need to pass. Trigger.new is contains the list of lead records. List of lead records. So list of lead records or a lead list. Lead list. Now take this lead list and pass it to the, instead of trigger.new, let's pass it here. Rest all the data is same. Rest all data is same. Now I'm going to call this method from trigger. So the Apex class name is a lead handler dot. This is the method name, and here I'll pass the trigger.new. Trigger.new. Now click on it, save. Perfect. So we have a trigger here. Inside the trigger, I'm calling the another handler method, handler class. In the handler class, I'm calling the, so in the trigger, I'm calling the handler class. Within the handler class, you can have a multiple methods. You can have a multiple methods. One method is for the after update. Only for after update, we have a logic that is written here. So if you have a after insert, you can write here another if condition trigger dot is after and a trigger dot is insert. In that case, you can implement another method which is called as a public static void after insert. Now every context variable create a separate method so that you will have a clarity. So what we are doing it here from the trigger, we are calling the handler class. Within the handler class, we are calling the specific method. And while calling the method, we are passing the latest data of the trigger. Latest data of the trigger. Now the same method can be called from Visual Force. Same method can be called from Visual Force. Now while from the Visual Force also, I can directly call and I can display it. I can display the data. Now let's go ahead and check this whether it is working or not. Now let me take some data here. Record 12. Now what I'll do is I'll update the status to the closed. And here I'll say false and click on it, save. Amen. So I'm updating the lead status to the closed converted and click on it, save. So as soon as I click on a save, it will convert the leads to the account contact opportunity. Account contact opportunity, it is converted. So that means this logic is working. Now this is how we write it in the real time. In the real time, we do not write any logic here. We do not write any logic in the trigger. We do not write any logic in the trigger. We will write the logic in the handler or a helper. There is another class called helper. There is another class called helper. So in real time, from the trigger, we will call trigger handler. We will call trigger handler. And from the trigger handler, we will call another class which is says helper. Which is says helper. Trigger helper. So which is nothing but a helper. Now this is handler class. Handler helper. And in the helper, we will write a business logic. Business logic. After update, after insert, before update, we will write those logic. Now handler is if there is any conditions, that means before going to the business logic, if you want to check certain conditions, those conditions will be cross-verified in the handler. Trigger is just it will have a event and a trigger context variable. Is after, is update, those things will be there here in the trigger. So the logic in the real time, we will write it as a trigger, handler, helper. The business logic is always sits into the helper. Business logic is always sits into the helper. Now, let's see one class. Now, in case if you have a different scenario like a before insert or anything that you have, for example, if you have this is a after update, I'm writing it. Let's assume that there is another event here which says that after insert. After insert. Whenever it is after insert, you will check here trigger context variable trigger dot is after and trigger dot is insert. Trigger dot is insert. Now you will check these conditions. Now here one that means you will be writing the another method here. This method is after insert. After insert. Now for this after insert, you will write a business logic here. You will write business logic. Now you will check here is if it is a after insert, you will call the lead handler dot after insert. After insert trigger dot new. Trigger dot new. After insert trigger dot new. This is for each one you will be calling the logic. Like this, you will be calling the logic for the each one of them. So that means every event you will have a separate logic which is written in the real time. Now let's see the one of the use case. Now is any questions before moving on to the trigger handler part, before moving to the use case? Any questions on the trigger handler? Now let's see the use case. Now we have a object called hiring manager object, hiring manager object. And also we have within this hiring manager object, we have different fields are there: ID, name, location, phone number. Similarly, there is another object which is called as a recruit. Recruiter is another object. Now in the recruiter also we have a ID, name, location, and then phone number. Now here recruiter is a separate object, hiring manager is a separate object. Now what I have done is I have implemented a relationship between the recruiter and hiring manager. What is the relationship? The lookup relationship is implemented. Lookup relationship is implemented between the recruiter and hiring manager. That means in the recruiter, I have created a lookup field. I have created a lookup field which is looking for the hiring manager. That means a hiring manager is a parent object. Recruiter is a child object. Recruiter is a child object. Now in the hiring manager, let's assume that we have a data. We have a data here. Some data is available, and then for each ID will have some name, location, and the phone number is available. Now the scenario is whenever I'm creating a new record in the hiring manager, whenever I'm creating a new record in the hiring manager, same data should be copied to the recruiter also. Same data should be copied to the recruiter, as well as it should link the hiring manager record here. That means whatever the name, location, phone number is there, those data should, as soon as I create a record in the hiring manager, the same data should be copied to the recruiter object. Same data should be copied to the recruiter object along with updating the related hiring manager record ID. Updating the related hiring manager record ID. Now that means I need to implement a trigger which says after insert. Where do I need to implement this trigger? On the hiring manager, I need to implement a trigger after insert. After insert. As soon as I insert a record, the data should be copied to the recruiter object. Whatever the child object is there, it should update here. It should update here. That means whatever the hiring manager record is there, right? So this record, whenever I create a new record in the hiring manager record, the trigger should fire. And here the event is after insert. Now, whenever this event is fired, then immediately copy those details and paste those details to the recruiter object. Paste those records to the recruiter object. Now, similarly, tomorrow, client says that this has been implemented. Tomorrow, client says that now, not only on the insert. For example, if I am updating the location, before it was Chennai. Now, whenever we are updating the location to Bangalore, whenever I'm updating the location to Bangalore, the same data should be updated in the recruiter also. The same data should be updated in the recruiter also. That means whatever updates are happening on the parent record should copy to the child record. Could be a location, could be a phone number, or could be a name. Whatever the data I'm changing in the hiring manager record, those data should be updated in the child records also. Child records also, the data should be updated. That means we need to implement a trigger which is called as a after update. I need to implement a trigger on the hiring manager which says that as soon as any of the data is updated in the hiring manager, copy that data to the recruiter object. Copy that data to the recruiter object. That means right now on the hiring manager, we have two triggers. Assume that we have two triggers. One is a after insert, another one is a after update. We have after insert and a after update. Whether I'm creating a record or I'm updating a record, whatever I'm doing on the hiring manager, those data should be copied to the recruiter. Those data should be copied to the recruiter. Now tomorrow, after a few days, client will come back saying that sometimes we are updating the phone number directly on the recruiter. We are updating the phone number directly on the recruiter. So whenever we update a phone number directly on the recruiter, it should reflect on the hiring manager. It should reflect on the hiring manager. That means we need to write a trigger after update on the recruiter. Trigger after update on the recruiter. And that will, what will do, whatever the changes it is happening in the recruiter, those should be reflected on the hiring manager. Those should be updated in the hiring manager. Now, this is the overall requirement. This is overall requirement. This kind of a scenarios will be there in the real time. This kind of scenarios will be there in the real time. Now, let's go ahead and implement the first one, which is called as a after insert. After insert. Before that, let me check, do I have a recruiter and hiring manager? Let's switch to the Lightning. We have a recruiter object. Now let's click on a new record. So we have a recruiter name, location, email address, hiring manager. Fine, the data is available. What I need is whenever we are creating a new record, whenever we are creating a new record in the hiring manager, the data, the hiring manager name, designation, location, the contact number, email address should be copied to the recruiter record, should be copied to the recruiter. It should be copied to the recruiter. Now let's go ahead and first implement a trigger on the hiring manager, and event is after insert. After insert. Now file, click on a new trigger. The trigger which we are implementing on the hiring manager. The trigger which we are implementing on hiring manager. Hiring manager, and name of it is, let's assume that sync hiring manager, sync HR data, sync HR records trigger, sync HR records trigger. Now click on a submit. Now here the first one is a after insert. After insert. Now the context variables are if trigger dot is after and trigger dot is insert. Is insert. Then I wanted to write a logic within this. Now that logic I'll be writing in a separate class. That logic I'll be writing in the separate class. Instead of writing the logic here, what I'll do is I'll create a new Apex class. It says that hiring manager handler. Hiring manager handler. In this handler, the method is a public static void, and what is the event? It is a after insert. So I'll write here after insert. After insert. Now within this, I need to pass the data to the after insert. Now what is the data that I need? I need a list of hiring manager. Hiring manager underscore C. Now HR list. HR list. Now this is the data that I need to pass it from the trigger. Now once I have the data, I'll check. Once I have the data, I'll check this. If I have a data here, that means HR list dot empty. If it is not empty, then I'm going to loop through the hiring manager records. Loop through the hiring manager records. Let's get the API name of the hiring manager. Hiring manager, HR, colon. We have a list of the hiring manager records. Now I'll look through these records. Now I'll look through the records. Now, that means as soon as the record is inserted in the hiring manager, I need to take that data and I need to create a recruiter record. Recruiter record. Now here, let me get the API name of the recruiter. Now we have a recruiter here. So recruiter REC equal to new recruiter. New recruiter. Now here REC dot REC dot name equal to, we have a HR dot name. I'm copying the hiring manager details to the recruiter. REC dot location. Location name equal to HR dot, we have a location. And similarly, we have a REC dot email address equal to HR dot email address. And REC dot contact number, or contact number is not there, email address designation equal to HR dot designation. HR dot designation. Now these are the data that I'm copying to the here. Once this is done, then what I'll do is I'll store everything into the list of the records. I'll store everything into the list of recruiter. That means, let me create a list for this. About the for loop, I'll say here list of recruiters. REC list equal to list of recruiters. Now I'll push all these single records into the list. Dot add. What are the each record is there, that each record I am pushing into the collection. Now also along with this, we need to add hiring manager record also. That means we need to link the hiring manager record. That means I need to add REC dot hiring manager equal to HR dot ID. HR dot ID. I'm linking the recruiter, the lookup field. What are the lookup field is there? That lookup field I'm updating as a, what are the new hiring manager record is there? That record I'm updating it. Now once I have a data here, once I have a data come out of the for loop, and check here if the data is not empty. Record list dot if it is not empty. If it is not empty, then I'm going to insert record list. Insert record list. Click on save. Click on save. This is my method here. And what I'll do is I'll call this method from trigger. From trigger, I'll call this method. Now, while calling the method, I'm going to pass this list. So that means hiring manager handler dot after insert, and for after insert, we are going to pass trigger dot new. Trigger dot new. Click on save. Now, we are done with the trigger. We are done with the trigger. Now let's go ahead and see that whether it is creating or not. Hiring manager. Click on new. Now let's say that I'm going to create. Here hiring manager is Madhu Mohan and designation is, let's give HR executive. Location is Hyderabad. Email address madhu@gmail.com, and then current CTC, and then contact number. Now click on it, save. Outside of the valid range. Required field is missing phone number. Phone number is mandatory on the hiring recruiter. So let's see here, REC dot phone number equal to HR dot contact number. Click on save. Now let's click on it, save. Now as soon as it is created, now the one recruiter which is created, Madhu Mohan, one recruiter which is created right now, and it is today only it is created. All the data it is copying from hiring manager to the recruiter. It is copying the hiring manager to the recruiter. Now this step is completed. After insert, step is completed. Next step is after update. Now once this is done, that means right now whenever I create a hiring manager record, it is creating the recruiter also. It is creating the recruiter. Now, for example, if I am updating any data here, I'm updating some name or I'm updating the contact number, some data, I'm updating it. Whenever I update a data, the data should be updated in the recruiter. Now I have updated the phone number, right? But here the phone number is did not update. Now next thing is that I need to update the data. What are the data that is updated in the hiring manager? Same data should be reflected on the recruiter. That means same data should be updated in the recruiter. Now that means I need to have a second one which is called as a after update. Now let me add here the event after update. Now trigger context variables are if trigger dot is after, trigger dot is after, and trigger dot is after, and trigger dot is update, is update. Now whenever it is update, then I wanted to write a different logic. The logic which I'm going to write it here, Now here I'll say that public static void after update. Now here for after update, I need to get the complete map collection data. I need to get the complete map collection data. That means here I have it. The data will, for after update, the data will be there in the trigger.new, as well as the data will be there in the trigger.new map. Now, whenever the data is updated here, how can you cross verify whether really the data is updated or not? Whether really the data is updated or not. Those details will be there in the trigger.new map. Trigger.new map. That means this is a collection of map. So for that, I'm going to, the parameter which we need is a map. Parameter which we need map. Map of ID, comma, hiring manager. Let's say map HR records or a HR map. HR map. Now we are going to get the collection of map collection data we are going to get as a parameter here. Because we are going to get the latest one. Trigger.new map will contain the very latest. Now, first thing, whenever we are updating the hiring manager record, I need to find which is the related recruiter. Do I have a related recruiter for this hiring manager or not? Only we should update the one which are related to that particular hiring manager. We should update the recruiter's records only to the one which are linked to that particular hiring manager. That means for the after update, first cross verify what are the recruiters that are related to this particular hiring manager. Now for that, I'm going to implement a query here, list of recruiter underscore C. Now let's say here REC recruiter list. Recruiter list equal to select ID, comma, name, comma. Now what else we have on the recruiter? ID, designation, and then we have a HR hiring manager, and then we have an email address, and then we have location, and the phone number. Right? Name, designation, email address, location, phone number. These are the details from recruiter. Now here where the hiring manager equal in, where this hiring manager in, we have to check the HR map. In the HR map, all the IDs are in the key. All the IDs are here in the key. So that means HR map dot, we have a key set. HR map dot key set. HR map dot key set. Because all the hiring manager IDs are in the key. Now, once I get the list of the records, that means I need to check if whatever this list of records, I have a data. That means it is not empty. If it is not empty, the first thing which I need to do is I need to loop through the recruiters. Possible that one hiring manager maybe it is linked to the one recruiter or a multiple recruiter. So that's the reason I'm using here for loop. I'm looping through the recruiter RC colon. Now we have a recruiters list. For this recruiter list, now what I'm doing here is I'm getting the list of hiring manager records. Now where are that hiring manager record? Hiring manager records are in the map. So what I'll do is hiring manager. So I'll get each one of them. HR equal to whatever this HR map is there. HR map dot get the particular hiring manager ID, RC dot hiring manager ID. So within this recruiter, whatever the ID is available for that, get the details of the hiring manager. Now next thing is that you need to set to the recruiter equal to HR dot name, similarly REC dot location, name equal to HR dot location, REC dot email address equal to HR dot email address, and then REC dot contact number or a REC dot phone number equal to HR dot contact number. 36 line. Am I missing anything here? No. So now it's not REC, it's RC. Now each record, I'm updating the data here. Whatever the data is available, I'm updating the hiring manager record to the recruiter record. Now location, email address, phone number. What else we have? Location, email address, contact number, that's all. Now finally, I need to put this entire data into the list. Now let me add this. List
So now,
of,
is there a need for a list? I think we can directly update REC list also, right?
we are writing the trigger on hiring manager.
Yeah. So I mean, we can use this variable, no, recruiter list dot update. What is that? Update recruiter list. No, outside the for loop.
You can write that also.
Yeah.
So you can write here, update the recruiter list. But where are we right now? We are in a trigger called hiring manager. And we are looping through the recruiter and we are updating the recruiter here. Now let's go ahead and call this after update in the trigger. And in the trigger, directly I can call hiring manager handler dot after update. Then I can pass the trigger dot new map. new map. Let me save this. Okay. Now we have a logic for after insert and after update. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and modify some data here. You can change the location. For example, I'm changing the location from Hyderabad to Bangalore. Click on save. Now let's go ahead and check the recruiter. Click on this recruiter. It is updated the location Bangalore. It is updated the location Bangalore. Also the phone number is also updated. But let's assume that I have clicked on the edit button. I have clicked on edit button. But I did not make any changes. I did not make any changes. Now I'll click on it, save. Now I'll click on it, save. What is happening? It is updating the recruiter also. It is updating the recruiter. I'm not making any changes there. I'm not making any changes. For example, it says 8 a.m. It says 8 a.m. Now I'll go back to the detail list. Now, for example, I just edited it, but I did not make any changes here. I went for a break. And I came back after maybe 1 hour or 2 hours. Now I saw this edit page is open. Now I forgot that what I have updated here. So what I'll do is whatever I might have updated, I'll click on a save. But actually we have not updated anything here. We have not updated anything here. I'll click on a save. Whenever I click on a save, it says that 8:1 a.m. 8:1 a.m. Now it is going to update the recruiters also. It is going to update the recruiter. That means unnecessarily I'm doing a DML operation here. Unnecessarily I'm doing a DML operation. Not only the DML operation, we have a SOQL query in a update. Unnecessarily we are executing the SOQL query. Unnecessarily we are doing the DML, which is not required because actually we are not updating anything here. Are we updating anything here? We are not updating. I'm not updating. I'm just clicking on a save button. As soon as I click on a save button, my recruiter is also, sorry. So as soon as I click on a save button on the here, my recruiter is also getting updated. My recruiter is also getting updated. So whenever it is update, that means whether you are truly doing the updates or not, trigger is not checking that condition. Trigger is not checking the condition. Simply it is calling the after update and executing the one SOQL query, right? And also doing the some kind of a DML operation here. That means every time whenever I do update, whether I'm really updating here or not doesn't matter. Every time whenever I click on a edit and every time whenever I click on a save button, the recruiter is going to go for a update. Now, for example, if I'm updating the hiring manager and if I go to the related list also getting executed, right? So unnecessarily I'm wasting the time here. Unnecessarily I'm wasting the SOQL query execution, whatever the RAM, the execution is here, whatever the executions are there here, those executions I'm doing the DML updates, SOQL query updates, query rows updates, everything unnecessarily it is executing it. DML statement update, right? Number of DML rows. This everything which is not needed because we are not truly updating the data. In those scenarios, how can we cross check? How can we cross check? That means before calling this Apex class, what we have to do is we have to check certain conditions. We have to check certain condition. That means loop through here. Now here for loop, whatever the hiring manager is there, get a hiring manager to it, HR:, trigger.new. new. Now here in the trigger dot new, what I'm going to check is I'm going to check the condition if trigger dot, we have a something called old map dot get hiring manager record ID HR dot ID. For this particular ID, check the name. Is the old map, whatever the old value is there, is the old value is same as new value or not? If it is a different, then only get inside. If it is a different, then only get inside. Otherwise, don't go for it. That means not only the HR manager, we need to check different condition. This is a one condition where I need to check the hiring manager. Similarly, or condition, I need to check trigger dot. I need to check trigger dot old map. What are the old value is there? Old map dot get the HR record ID dot. We can get the location.
Ma'am, trigger dot old map is okay. Like dot get HR dot ID. What was that? Can you explain that?
So basically trigger dot old map, trigger dot new map. What is the output for this? What is the how the data will be stored here? For in
ID
this,
and the list.
it will be stored as a map of ID, comma
Map of ID comma list.
hiring manager. Whatever the
ID.
hiring manager record is there, it will be stored.
Yes.
Now for the map collection, whenever we wanted to get this is a key and this is a value. Whenever we wanted to get a value, we need to search with the ID. That means, for example, this is the one map. This is one map. So whenever I wanted to get here, I'll give it as a M. Let's take a maps equal to new map of ID, comma, whatever the hiring manager is there, like this. Now here, if I wanted to get the values of this, what I'll do, I'll say that maps dot get, I'll pass the ID. That means for particular ID, get me the value. What is the ID here? We are passing the key. ID is nothing but I'm passing a key here. Whenever I pass a key, I'll get a value. Whenever I'll pass a key, I'll get a value. Now here trigger dot old map dot get hiring manager ID. For this particular hiring manager ID, check only the name. So each field value I need to check. If it is not updating, then only we can. That means if it is not updating any field value, we should not go inside it. So that's the reason I'm checking with the new value with the old value. Whatever the new value is there is the same as the old value. Now here location not equal to HR dot. We have a location.
Swapna,
Yeah.
yeah, can't we do like trigger dot old is equal to trigger dot new? We can't compare the two
What
lists.
is the trigger dot new?
Trigger dot new will have the new value, right?
What we are
And
doing it here.
no, what I'm saying is rather than doing this for loop, can't we do trigger dot new is equal to if it's not equal to trigger dot old, then only do this logic rather than comparing each and every field?
Is it better to check all the data? Is it better to check all the data of the old equal to new, or is it better to check only single value? No, old equal to map. That means including created date, created map, everything. Whatever the data is there, everything you are checking it. in real time, we are checking the each individual field. There are some 100 fields are there. Out of 100 fields, I might have to check only the 2 fields.
Okay. No, that's what, like if there are so many fields, then we have to write that logic for each and every field. And in future, if we add more fields, then again, we have to update our trigger, right? That's what I was saying. So
You can do that. But again, for me, as per best practices, we have to cross-verify the field level. I cannot check entirely trigger.old equal to trigger.new map. Instead of that, better check the each field.
okay.
Now here, let's go ahead and check that. Now this is the location. Now whenever this data is updated, that means either the name or a location, or let's assume that only 2 field. Whenever the name or location is updated, then only I wanted to call this hiring manager. Then only I wanted to call the hiring manager. So in that case, here I'm going to cross verify that data. That means I'm comparing the old value with new value. I'm comparing the old value with new value. Now, what you are going to do here, I'm going to store that entire data. That means if it is really differences are there, those data I'm going to store it into the another collection. I need to store it into the another collection. That means I need to build another map here, ID, comma, hiring manager, HR, records update equal to new map of ID, comma, hiring manager record. Now I'll put everything into this. So hiring manager HR record update dot put. I'll place the HR record ID, comma HR, which is nothing but I'm storing the ID as well as the hiring manager data. Now, if this value is true, that means if there is a value here, then only I'm going to call the another method. Then only I'm going to call the another method. Then only I'm going to call the another method, another class and the method. Now here, instead of passing the trigger.new map, you already have a data here, which is a hiring manager, which we are storing the actual records. So those records, we are going to pass the data. Instead of passing the trigger.new map, just pass the one which are actually edited. Those are the records which are actually modified. Those records only we are going to send information. Now, any questions here? Is everybody clear? Jyoti? Bharati?
Ma'am, if name and locations are not equal, then we need to update the things, right?
Yes.
Okay. What about the remaining things and email, phone, everything?
Those also we can write it here or condition.
Okay. What is the basic main thing you need to take this? Why are you take this not equal to? What is the main reason?
The reason is, before what was happening here is, I'm not updating anything. I'm not updating any data here. If I'm not updating and clicking on a save record, what happened? It says that the data is updating. As soon as the hiring manager record is updated, that means I'm not updating any data. I'm just clicking on an edit button and clicking on a save here. As soon as I save here, at the same time, recruiter object is also updating. related recruiter record is also updated. But do you think that needs to be updated in case if I do not make any changes here?
No.
It should not update it, right?
Yeah.
So, but it is updating it. So when we saw it is unnecessarily executing the SOCL, right? So the SOCL executed and the DML statement is executed. Those should not be happen because there is we are not changing anything. Then why we are updating the recruiter? So for that scenario, we have to check, is my latest value is different from the old value? If it is a different from the old value, then only update it. Otherwise, don't update any of the record in the recruiter.
Okay.
Any other questions here?
Ma'am, if you updated any phone number here, then it will not updated, right, in the recruiter, because the name is same, right? Name is same here.
Can you repeat that again?
If you want to update the contact number in the hiring manager, then it should be updated in the recruiter also.
Yes.
But the name is similar here. In the hiring manager and the recruiter, name is same. So it will not go to that condition, right? Our condition is different.
Okay,
If
let's simplify here. Now I have kept the condition, only two things are there, okay? Name, location, and checking it. For example, I wanted to check other conditions also. Now I'll put it here, or condition. What I'll write is, I'll write instead of location, along with the location, I'll take another field. So here I'll check a trigger dot old map location, and we have a contact number. Underscore, is it same as previous or not? Similarly, I'll check the new one. Similarly, I'll check another one, which is called as an email ID. That means any of the data that I'm modifying it, it should be only whenever there is a change on any of this data, then only go ahead and update the information. What is the email? Email address. Now, any of these fields are updated, then only go ahead and update the record. Otherwise, do not update. For example, I'm changing the contact number here. If you are changing the contact number, click on a save. Then go to the recruiter, then it will be updated here. Now, for example, I'll go back to the hiring manager. In the hiring manager, I'll just click on a edit button, but I don't modify anything. Click on a save. I'll just say here, click on edit. I'm not modifying anything here. I'm not modifying any data. I'll simply looking at the data here, and I'll go for a break and I'll come back after some time. Whenever I come back, it says that it's still in the edit mode. Now, in that case, what we will do is either we cancel or a save. Most of the times, few members, what they do is they will just click on a save button. But did we modify anything here?
No.
We have not modified anything. So I'll simply click on a save. Here it says 8:19 a.m. So here in the recruiter, it still says a 8:18 a.m. That means I'm saving the limitations. I'm saving the limitations. Now, if you go to the developer console and if you look at the log says that whatever the limitations are there, number of SQL query 0, number of DML statement 0. Now, previously what happened? The number of SQL queries were, whatever the SQL queries were there, it got executed. Before it was executing the SQL query 1, number of query rows 1, DML statement and DML rows is executed 1. Any questions?
Hi, Swapna. I am Ramgopal. I have a doubt regarding contact manager. We have to name and location. We have to update. Same hiring manager, name, location, same update. Like before, like contact number or email address, we have to update. What happened? Like it's updated or not? Maybe.
You are updating on the recruiter also?
Yes.
That scenario we have not reached. We have not reached to the recruiter point. We are just implementing the trigger after update on the hiring manager.
Okay. In hiring manager, we update phone number. It's updating or not? Maybe here we write and code name location only, no?
No, we are writing the location. We are checking all the conditions here. Name, location, contact number, email address. Any of these fields are updated in the hiring manager. It should be updated in the recruiter also.
Okay.
So this is one way of implementation. Another way of implementation is here you are repeating the trigger.old map. Trigger.old map you are keep on writing here. Instead of writing a trigger.old map every time, what you can do is you can store the trigger.old map for that particular account ID. That means you can take here hiring manager, let's say that HR record. Let's say here HR record equal to trigger.old map dot get whatever the HR ID is there. HR ID is there, store everything here. Now, what are the common ones are there here? Simply you can use, let's say this is the old HR. Now, old HR. Now, instead of every time you're writing the trigger.old map, simply you can say here old HR. Old HR. Old HR equal to new HR. Let's say this name is a new HR, new hiring manager. New hiring manager. Old one is not equal to new one. What I'm doing is all the old records I'm storing into the single hiring manager record, and I'm comparing that single hiring manager old value with a new value. Is that clear? Any confusion here?
Swapna, one question. Can I put this validation in class level?
What kind of a validation?
I mean, like this variable change checking, if condition.
This one?
Yes. Instead of in trigger level, can I put in class level?
But you are already calling the class. This class is
Yes,
with the business logic. Before hitting the class itself, we should cross-verify those.
Okay.
Few developers write it here also, but it's not the best way to do.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Swapna. Okay.
Now, Archana, how you will compare the record with the old one and new one?
No, I was saying like, trigger new is equal to trigger dot old.
Repeat that. If
Trigger dot new is
Mhm.
equal to trigger dot old
trigger dot new not equal
is
to
equal to, yeah, trigger
trigger
dot
dot
old.
old.
Yeah, then only repeat this. Do this logic.
Okay, can you test this? This is a homework for you guys. Instead of writing like this, write this way and see what is happening and give me the result tomorrow. Instead of specifying the each field comparison, when you compare it like this, what is happening? What is happening? Okay, it's a homework for you guys. Now, that's the one. And next one we have a recruiter. Now what we have done, we have implemented a after insert trigger on the hiring manager, after update trigger on the hiring manager. Now the next one is, so far the direction is everything this side. Whether you insert here or a update here, recruiter should be updated or a created. Now the next scenario is the other direction. Whatever you update here, it should be updated here. Now implement this trigger after, that is a homework, and tell me what is happening. There is some magic will happen. When you write a after update trigger on the recruiter, tell your observations tomorrow. This is a homework. Homework is trigger update, homework. Write a trigger update trigger on the recruiter. Whenever you update any field, it could be a phone number, location, or a name or a ID. Do not update this one. This is as it is. Don't update this. Whenever you update a phone number or a location or a name, whenever you update these three fields, what should happen? There is a trigger should be firing it. And here the event is after update, and that after update should update the hiring manager. The parent record should be updated. Now, once this is implemented, tell me what is happening. You have to implement the trigger after insert. Whatever I did it for the class, you need to implement after insert trigger for the hiring manager. After update also you need to implement. These two things you need to write a logic. After writing this logic, write a logic for the recruiter also. And tell me what is happening on that. That's a homework.
Swapna?
Yeah.
Yeah, will it throw an exception?
Test it instead of an assumption. Implement a logic and tell me what is happening. Okay. So that's the homework. Two homework. One is right now, whatever you guys said, that old one comparing with the new one. Tell me what is happening when you compare it with the old one with the new one directly. Whether it is working or not. If it is working, which way it is working. If it is not working, why it is not working. What is the reason why it is not working. That's the homework. And the second homework is you need to implement whatever I have done it in the class. You need to implement a trigger for after insert, after update for the hiring manager. And once this is done, you need to implement a after update for the recruiter. And just play with this and give me the output tomorrow for this. Fine. After discussing this, whatever the homework is there, first we will discuss the homework, then only we'll move on for tomorrow's class. Fine, that's all for today.